God is all about blessing, and it's bigger than you might think. In spite of rebellion and ruining His good world, God has made a habit of blessing His creation and the people in His creation. From the very beginning, when He created Adam and Eve, Genesis 1, verse 27 tells us that He blessed them. Then we have the flood, and Noah and his family coming out of that flood after God had destroyed the earth because of the wickedness of mankind. And it says that God blessed Noah. And again, the people of the world ruined His good world and wandered away from Him. And in Genesis 12, God picks one person, Abram, to call him out. And He says to him in chapter 12 that I am going to bless you and make of you a great nation. And we know that through Abram, who later became Abraham, came Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, the tribes of Israel, and Jesus Christ. So God has been blessing His people throughout the ages, and He still does. Remember what Psalm 67:1 said? May God be gracious to us and bless us and make His face shine upon us. That actually is from Numbers chapter 6. And I'll just read that to you real quickly because this is a blessing that God gave to the priests to give to His people. Verse 22 of chapter 6, the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make His face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the Lord turn His face toward you and give you peace. So throughout history, God has been blessing His people. He's been blessing Israel. He blesses us as well. So what we have here in Psalm 67, the first verse, is basically the psalmist is taking this priestly blessing, putting it into a song, and he's giving those words again, and he said, Selah, which is probably a musical refrain. It means to stop, to pause, to consider. And so that's what we're going to do here for just a few minutes now. We're going to stop, we're going to pause, and we're going to think about the blessing of God. I mean, we all want God's blessing in our life, right? And He wants to bless us. So we wonder, what is the grace, blessing, and favor of God? Well, I think we can say that it means that God is giving us the kinds of things that we want. Now, that's obviously got to be within bounds. He's not going to give us things that go against His nature, against His goodness, His kindness, His graciousness. I mean, He's not going to give us vengeance toward another person or dishonest gain or some kind of drunken party. But He does bless us with good circumstances that come into our lives. Those that reflect that goodness, that graciousness, that love of His nature. And it comes in many forms. It may come in the form of a new job or a repaired relationship. It may come in mental and emotional healing in our lives. We go to the doctor and we have a healthy checkup. We have food on our table or deliverance. Maybe someone gives us an unexpected gift. Extra cash to pay the bills, better housing, or just being treated kindly, getting a break. Those are all things that could come into our life, that God could bring into our life, that is a blessing. Ultimately, God's favor is bigger than those kinds of things. He blessed us with a Savior, a humble Savior, who was willing to sacrifice himself to death, even death on the cross when he humbled himself. And he brings to us salvation, reconciliation with God, restoration for things and for our lives to be made as they should be before we ruined his good world. He gives us nearness to himself. God blesses us in those ways as well. Now, let's remember that blessings are God's doing and not ours. We can't earn or attain his grace or his favor. We can't manipulate him into blessing, and maybe you've tried to do that before. I know I have. God, if you will just give me this, or if you will just do this, or if things turn out this way, then I'll serve you forever, or I'll stop doing that, or I'll be a better person. So we try to manipulate God to get what we want by forging some sort of deal with him. Well, God can't be manipulated. Sometimes we even think that way without maybe saying the words to him, but we just think subconsciously that if I live a good life, if I serve him, if I'm devoted, then God will do something extra for me. Well, that's just not the way it is. God is not manipulated. In Psalm 67, after he asks for this blessing, he takes this idea of blessing in a totally different direction. And I just want you to notice this in chapter 67, verse 2. He says this: I want this gracious and blessing so that, in chapter 2, your ways may be known on earth, your salvation among the nations. You see, God is at the center of the story. We're not the center of the story to receive his blessing. God is at the center of the story. And when he brings favor into our lives, others see it. And we make him known throughout the world. It's extended into the world. He's getting involved with other people. That is just another whole realm. That's just another whole way of thinking about that. Because generally, and while it's not inappropriate to think it's about the good things that God is bringing to me, the psalmist is saying, wait. God, I want it to be even bigger than that. I want this to come into my life. I want this to come into Israel's life. I want this to come into our life, these good things. And I want it to spread out. I want it to have this rippling out effect so that others see, so that they realize who you are, so that your ways will be made known. And what are God's ways that will be made known? Well, he talks about that here in 67. He talks about that God rules justly, that he does what is right, that he does what is fair and good and hopeful and loving. He also does it with fairness. He is supreme. He is omniscient and omnipotent. All those things that are true about God is what is being made known to others, that's rippling out into the world when he blesses us. So here is a key spiritual insight. Living into God's blessing awakens others to his ways. Living into God's blessing awakens others to his ways. Now, I've already said that we cannot manipulate God. We can't say, if you do this, then I'll do this. We can't obtain it that way. But we can live into it. We can live into His blessing. And when I say that, I mean, well, first of all, we can ask for it. That's what the psalmist did here in 67. That's what Jacob did. If you remember the story, when he wrestled with the angel of the Lord, and he said, I won't let you go until you bless me. And maybe you have, or maybe you haven't heard of Jabez. There was a book written a number of years ago called The Prayer of Jabez. Many people were praying the prayer of Jabez at that time. And it says this: Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, "Oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm, so that I will be free from pain." It goes on to say, and God granted his request. Hey, there's nothing wrong with asking for God's blessing. There's nothing wrong with telling him what you want within the realm of what he can and will do. Jabez did it. Jacob did it. The psalmist did it. We can ask. We can ask for God's blessing. And I think that's living into it. Another thing that we can do is live a life that's open to God. That's not manipulation, but we see our faith deepen as we continually come back to God at the center. And we can have a heart that is prepared to receive his blessing when he chooses to give it. It's kind of like the farmer. I don't know if you farm or if you garden, but if you're a farmer or a garden, you prepare the soil, right? Maybe in the fall you put in some mulch and let it soak into the ground. Then in the spring you turn over the garden and then you till it so that it's fine, and set your rows and put your seeds in the ground and cover those seeds up. But at that point, it's pretty much beyond your control. It's in control of the seed, whether it's a good seed to come up. It's control of how much rain comes, which you can't control. Only God can. It's the sunshine coming and giving the sunlight that causes it to grow. That is all out of your control. Well, that's much the way it is of living into God's blessing. We can't manipulate, but we can have an open heart toward God, living to see our lives deepen so that it's ready and prepared to receive his blessing when he chooses to give it.